You ever have someone look you dead in the eye and make you doubt your own memory? That's what my wife did. Not with screaming, not with drama. With calm, surgical lies. One day, my laptop vanished. I tore the house apart. Drawers, car, office, everything. When I asked her, she smiled and said, "You sure you even had one?" That's when something inside me cracked. See, I'm not a forgetful man, I'm an engineer. I count every cable on my desk. And yet, somehow, she made me question my own damn sanity. Each day after that felt like I was living in a crime scene only I could see. Clues disappearing, evidence shifting, her voice rewriting the truth. I thought I was losing my mind, but I wasn't crazy. I was being played, and by the time I proved it, it was already too late for her. I'm Ethan Miller, 35, mechanical engineer out of Austin, Texas. I've always liked predictable systems, things that made sense, gears that clicked. Life was steady. A decent house, a good job, weekend barbecues, friends who'd brag about their golf swings. If you'd met me 2 years ago, you'd have said I was the kind of guy who had it figured out. I thought marriage was another system. Maintain it, oil the joints. It runs fine. But people aren't machines. They change in ways you can't measure. I didn't know it yet, but tiny cracks had already started forming in my so-called perfect routine. The thing about cracks? You don't see them until the light slips through. And by the time you notice, something important's already leaking out. Amelia worked in accounting at a firm across town. We met at a networking mixer where everyone pretended to care about spreadsheets and sales projections. She laughed at my dumb joke about torque and taxes, and that laugh hooked me. Within a year, we were married. The first 2 years were the good kind of blur. Road trips to New Mexico, late-night Whataburger runs, plans for a future that felt infinite. She'd leave notes in my lunch bag. I'd bring her coffee every Sunday morning. Ordinary things, but they stitched us together. Back then, I believed love was measured in routines. Looking back, that's where I was wrong. Routines hide decay the way paint hides rust. It wasn't one big fight. It was silence. Thin, polite silence that crept in around year 3. She stopped waiting up for me. Her phone started living in her hand. Dinners turned into screens side by side instead of conversations face to face. I'd crack a joke. She'd smile without looking up. Nothing dramatic, just a slow withdrawal like someone dimming the lights one notch at a time. I told myself it was normal. Every marriage cools down. But there's a difference between cooling down and freezing over. I didn't see that yet. I just kept turning up the heat, hoping she'd feel it. Affection turned into small gestures of obligation, a quick kiss before work, a distracted love you thrown over her shoulder. I'd reach out. She'd flinch like the touch reminded her of something she'd rather forget. The house felt colder though the thermostat said 72. I tried to start deeper talks, but she'd glance at the clock or her phone and say, "Can we do this later?" Later never came. You start telling yourself stories. She's tired, stressed, maybe hormones, maybe me. Anything's easier than admitting love might be running on fumes. I built a spreadsheet of reasons to stay calm. Work stress, check. Inflation, check. Her mom's health, maybe. I treated our marriage like a project with data points I could fix if I just optimized harder. That's what engineers do. Troubleshoot. But hearts don't respond to logic or pie charts. Some nights she'd come home distant, and I'd pour her wine, hoping comfort would reboot whatever we'd lost. It didn't. She'd sip, smile faintly, and disappear into scrolling. I kept convincing myself she just needed time. What I really needed was honesty, and I didn't realize how little of it I was getting. If you've ever lain beside someone scrolling at midnight, you know that glow. It's colder than moonlight. She'd turn the screen away, say she couldn't sleep. I'd roll over, pretending not to care, but the rhythm of her typing sounded like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I told myself not to snoop. Decent men trust their wives. Still, every vibration made my stomach twist. Funny thing, when you ignore a feeling long enough, it doesn't disappear. It metastasizes into doubt. We started arguing about dishes, bills, nothing that mattered, but somehow I always ended up apologizing. She had this calm way of flipping the script. You're overreacting. You always imagine the worst. I'd walk away thinking maybe she was right. That's how gaslighting works. It doesn't shout. It whispers until you doubt your own volume. Each fight ended with me questioning my memory. Did I say that? Did I start this? She made me the villain of stories I didn't remember living. I began second-guessing everything. Where I parked, whether I'd paid a bill, if I'd actually misplaced things she claimed I lost. Once she insisted I'd promised to visit her cousin that weekend. I had no memory of it, but she sounded so certain that I apologized anyway. That's when you know something's off, when sorry becomes a reflex instead of a choice. My confidence, the same one that helped me manage multi-million-dollar projects, was slipping through my hands like sand. It started small, a charger gone, my earbuds missing. She'd shrug, "You're so forgetful lately." I laughed it off, but each time it happened, I felt a pulse of irritation. Then one day, the old camera I'd inherited from my dad vanished. She said maybe I lent it to a friend. I hadn't. The air in the house grew heavy, like something unseen was watching us both. I couldn't prove anything, but instinct kept whispering that these weren't accidents. They were rehearsals. Then came the day the laptop vanished. Not the work one, my personal MacBook, the one with 7 years of code, photos, pieces of my life. I checked every inch of the house. Nothing. When I asked her, she didn't even look up from her screen. "Maybe you never had one," she said, almost teasing. I froze. That joke felt surgical, deliberate. Something inside me shifted from confusion to quiet fear, because if she could make me doubt the existence of something I touched every day, what else could she make me forget? The next morning, I walked into my home office and froze. The space on my desk where my MacBook always sat was bare, dust outline, charger cord dangling like a cut vein. My first thought was that I'd moved it myself, maybe took it downstairs the night before. I checked the living room, the kitchen counter, even under the couch cushions. Nothing. I retraced every step like a detective in his own house. It's strange how quickly ordinary things turn suspicious. The drawer you've opened 1,000 times suddenly feels foreign. I searched until noon, heart pounding harder than made sense for a missing computer. It wasn't about money. It was about order. I keep track of my tools. When I still couldn't find it, a chill settled in. Something was wrong. And not just with the laptop. When Amelia came home, I tried to sound casual. "Hey, have you seen my laptop?" She looked genuinely puzzled, or maybe she'd practiced that face. "Which one?" "The personal one." She frowned, thought for a second, then shrugged. "Should be where you left it." Her tone was light, but her eyes didn't hold mine for long. I watched her pour wine, move around like it was just another Tuesday. I repeated, "It's gone." She blinked, gave me that half-smile wives use when husbands misplace car keys. "You sure you even had it out lately?" The way she said it wasn't cruel, but it carried a quiet confidence that made me second-guess myself. She acted like the problem was my memory, not the missing laptop. And that's when the first real crack appeared in my trust. The next morning, she texted me, "Check your office, maybe you took it to work by accident." The message was so reasonable that I almost felt foolish for not thinking of it. So I did. I drove to the plant, unlocked my office, scanned every shelf, every drawer. My coworkers joked that I looked like I'd lost a limb. "Just misplaced something," I muttered. But deep down, I knew that laptop hadn't left the house in weeks. Her suggestion wasn't about solving the mystery. It was about planting one in my head, the kind that grows roots in the dark and whispers, "What if she's right?" By the time I drove home, the line between doubt and trust had blurred into fog. That evening, I checked the garage, the trunk of my car, even the attic where the old boxes lived. Each place turned up nothing. It's amazing how fast you can start questioning your own routine when someone you love sounds so certain. I went through my work calendar, every meeting, every trip, just to be sure I hadn't carried it somewhere. The more I failed to find it, the louder her calm voice echoed in my head. "You must have misplaced it." It wasn't just missing equipment anymore. It was my competence on trial. And every empty drawer felt like evidence against me. Later that night, she leaned on the counter, glass of wine in hand, and said, "Maybe someone broke in while we were at work." I almost laughed. "To steal one laptop and nothing else." She shrugged. "Maybe they panicked. Maybe you startled them." I stared at the untouched TV, the gaming console, the camera on the shelf. "They skipped all this but took my computer." She sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Why are you making such a big deal about it?" That's the moment I realized she wasn't worried with me. She was managing me. The engineer in me couldn't let the break-in theory go. I checked doors, windows, locks, even called the neighbor about their security camera. Nothing. Every logical test disproved her story, yet she clung to it calmly, like truth didn't matter, only convenience. The more rational evidence I gathered, the more irrational I felt. She stayed unbothered, scrolling through her phone as I listed facts. Finally, she said softly, "Ethan, you're spiraling again." Spiraling. That word hung heavy. She made my investigation sound like instability. For the first time, I wondered which version of reality she was living in, and how long she'd been rewriting mine. The next day, she caught me searching again. "Still at it?" she asked. "You've been so forgetful lately. Stress will do that." She said it kindly, almost motherly, and that tone cut deeper than anger. I wanted to argue, but she kissed my cheek and added, "You work too hard. Take a break." Then she walked away, leaving the accusation hanging in the air disguised as concern. I stood there, hands on my knees, realizing I was defending my memory like it was a fragile thing. Gaslighting doesn't feel like manipulation at first. It feels like love, laced with doubt. That night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Could I have misplaced it? Maybe during that late project. I kept walking myself through possibilities until they blurred. I opened old emails, checking dates, convincing myself there had to be a logical reason, but logic couldn't quiet the crawling feeling under my skin. She slept peacefully beside me while my brain replayed her words, each one shifting my reality a little more. For the first time in my life, I couldn't trust my own recollection. That scared me more than losing any laptop ever could. Sleep became a stranger. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., convinced I heard footsteps, or that I'd finally remember where I left it. I'd tiptoe through the dark, checking closets like a man haunted by his own thoughts. Amelia would find me in the morning, dark circles under my eyes, and ask if I'd been working late again. I'd nod, too tired to argue. Each night replayed the same loop: search, doubt, exhaustion. She'd kiss my forehead, whisper, "You really need rest." But it wasn't rest I needed. It was truth. And she was the only one who had it. One evening, I brought it up again, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's been a week, Amelia. Are you sure you haven't seen it?" She looked at me like I'd asked something absurd and said, "Ethan, do you even use that thing anymore?" The question hit like a slap. It wasn't curiosity. It was dismissal, a rewrite of history. In that moment, something inside me went cold. Because if she could erase the importance of what I used every day, what else could she erase? That line, soft, almost playful, was the quiet thunderclap that split my world in two. From that night on, I stopped searching for my laptop and started searching for the truth. Order is how I breathe, so I treated the missing laptop like a job site incident report. I opened a yellow legal pad and mapped the last 10 days in boxes and arrows. Home office, kitchen counter, garage workbench, living room side table. I listed every place I'd sat, every bag I'd carried, every errand run. Then I set rules. Don't accuse, don't improvise, log everything. I took photos of desk drawers before and after I searched them. I labeled Ziplocs for cables, adapters, thumb drives. I even snapped the dust outline where the MacBook used to sit, a chalk body around an absence. The plan did something important. It gave my brain a life raft. Men my age know this trick. When feelings go wild, make a checklist. Calm returns when the pen moves, but by the time I'd drawn the fourth timeline and circled the same 3 locations again, a colder thought slid in. Systems are great. Unless the problem you're solving isn't lost property, it's a lie. I worked the phone like an insurance adjuster. First, my buddy Nate. He'd been over for the game. No laptop. Then my brother, who borrows tools sometimes. Nope. I called the office receptionist to ask if a black backpack had been turned in. Nothing. I hit the coffee shop where I camp on Saturdays. The barista remembered my usual and the exact dad joke I told, but not a stray computer. I even checked the Apple ID on my phone for a ping. Find My showed the last known location at home 3 weeks ago. I scrolled my bank statements for odd charges just in case someone had used my saved passwords. Clean. Everything was so ordinary it felt staged. Older guys will get this. When you've lived enough years, you learn to trust the quiet alarms, those little hairs on your arm standing up for no obvious reason. Every call that returned no didn't calm me. It tightened the net. A truth was hiding in my house, and it wasn't the laptop. I cast the widest net anyway. Neighbors, softball guys, even the new maintenance tech at work who sometimes helps me haul equipment. Nobody remembered seeing my personal MacBook. Not at the office, not in my car, not at a single weekend hang. The thing about asking around is it forces you to say the fear out loud. Each time I heard my voice say, "Yeah, it's just gone," it sounded less like a mistake and more like a story with a villain. I kept replaying Amelia's face when I first asked, how her eyes slid past me, how quickly she jumped to, "You sure you had it?" I wanted someone to tell me I'd left it behind in a booth or a truck bed. Instead, I got a choir of shrugs. I stood in my driveway at dusk, phone cool in my hand, watching porch lights blink on up and down the street. It hit me then. If the world couldn't account for it, the answer wasn't out there. It was in here. I've always believed in trusting my spouse. Snooping felt like breaking a vow. But there's a point where refusal to look becomes its own kind of lie. That night, Amelia fell asleep on the couch with the TV whispering reruns. Her phone lay face down on the coffee table, screen dim, the way she always left it lately. I sat on the ottoman, elbows on my knees, and let the house go completely still. AC hum, refrigerator click, the old ceiling fan soft wobble. Men who've raised kids know that stillness, the quiet before a decision. I didn't want proof. I wanted my life back. But wanting doesn't change facts. I picked up her phone. It asked for a passcode I already knew. We'd been that couple once. My thumb hovered. Somewhere in my ribs that voice said, "Don't do this." Another voice, older, harder, answered, "You already know, you have to." I unlocked it. If you've been there, you understand. The world between you and your spouse splits the second the screen lights up. I went straight to messages, heart drumming like I'd sprinted stairs. Family chat, coworkers, a Pilates group, nothing. I typed laptop in the search bar. No results. I scrolled and scrolled until my eyes blurred. A name I didn't recognize slid into view. J. Just the letter. No photo. I tapped it and felt her shift on the couch. I froze, phone hovering an inch above my lap. Breath clamped tight. She murmured, rolled to her other side, exhaled. I glanced at the TV. Two sitcom dads arguing about a lawnmower, canned laughter ticking like a metronome. I skimmed the top of the thread. Memes, short lines, nothing smoking. When I tried to scroll back farther, the app lagged, and Amelia's eyelids fluttered. I killed the screen and slid the phone back where it had been. My pulse pounded in my wrists. Standing in the kitchen, minutes later, drinking water I didn't want, I knew two things. I'd almost been caught, and I'd found the door. I just hadn't walked through it yet. Morning looked normal, which made it worse. Amelia made oatmeal, kissed my cheek, asked about my schedule. I matched her rhythm like a man taking small steps on thin ice. At work, I stared at CAD drawings and saw only message bubbles. J. Just a letter, like someone hiding behind a doorframe. I promised myself I wouldn't touch her phone again. Men don't want to be that guy. But by lunch, I'd written a plan on a sticky note I never meant to write. Wait until she sleeps. Open J. Scroll to the beginning. Record everything. It felt ugly and necessary at the same time, like pulling your own bad tooth. On the drive home, I caught my reflection in the rear view, older than last week. That's what betrayal does. It ages you in places no moisturizer reaches. That night, Amelia laughed at something on her screen and turned it away from me, casual and practiced. I washed the dishes slower than needed, counting minutes until midnight. I became a method actor, smiled at her shows, nodded about her day, told a harmless story from work to paint myself harmless. The trick to investigating your own life is simple. Never look like a detective. I folded laundry, asked if she wanted tea, turned down the bed. When she yawned and said she was exhausted, I said, "Me too." As if my mind wasn't sharpening knives, we lay there in the dark, the room full of all the words we weren't saying. Older guys know this scene. The marriage looks exactly the same from the outside, but on the inside, you're listening for a sound only you can hear. Her breathing evened out. 10 minutes. 20. I counted to 300, then slid out of bed with the slow care you use getting up from a creaky pew in church. In the hallway, the blue glow of the living room called to me. I had my answer waiting on that coffee table, or I had a lie about to be born. The phone unlocked like it wanted to be believed. Messages down to J. This time the thread had a face, a smirking kid in a backward cap, 20-something, too young to know the cost of what he was doing, or maybe young enough not to care. My thumb scrolled. The casual tone was a disguise. How's your day? Work sucks. Wish I was there. The timing told a different story. Late nights when I was in the garage, mid-afternoons when she said she had meetings. Farther back, I found the first heart emoji, then a photo of latte art that wasn't from our kitchen, and then a joke about older is better that made my stomach turn. I started screen recording, slow, steady, every line. When you finally stumble into the room where your suspicions live, there's no triumph, just gravity. I scrolled to a message I hadn't seen before. Did the spare work? My throat went dry. His reply was waiting below. There it was, 7 words and a smirking kiss that made my ears ring. Laptop fit perfectly. Thanks. The screen felt hot in my hand. I read it twice, 3 times, as if repetition could change letters into something less lethal. Amelia's response sat above it. Told you it would. Take care of it. I paused the recording to capture stills, timestamp, contact name, the stupid cap in his profile photo. I scrolled a little more and found talk about deadlines and how he'd spilled beer on the old one. He didn't ask her to buy anything. He didn't need to. She offered. And while I tore my house apart, while I questioned my memory, she was telling some kid to enjoy my machine. People think rage is loud. Mine wasn't. It was a cold, narrow hallway I started walking down, one careful step after another, knowing there was only one door at the end, and it wouldn't open to the life I had before. I set the phone down and stared into the dark. Laptop fit perfectly. Perfectly for who? For a stranger in a college hoodie who called my wife cute at 1:12 a.m.? For a kid whose life still smelled like lecture halls and cheap beer? I pictured my photos, my code, my father's scanned letters, all of it in hands that didn't even know my name. I wanted to wake her. I wanted to shake her. Instead, I stood at the window, the yard washed blue by the streetlight, and realized the most dangerous part wasn't the sex or the lies. It was the gaslight, the way she'd tried to swap my reality for hers. That's when a line formed inside me, sharp as glass. I wouldn't be the man who doubted himself anymore. I went back to the coffee table, picked up the phone, and kept recording, because the next time I asked for the truth, I planned to bring my own. I needed proof that wouldn't vanish when the phone did, so I hit record on my own phone and started scrolling, frame by frame. Her name at the top, his name, Jay, right below. Timestamps, emojis, photos cropped to the edge of decency. I captured everything, not because I wanted to, but because men like me don't get believed without receipts. The screen felt hot in my hand. My thumb kept slipping. I whispered the dates into the mic like a courtroom clerk. I recorded her good mornings to him, the private jokes, the hearts. I recorded the silence in our room while I worked. That silence is evidence too. When I finally stopped the recording, the file timer read 9 minutes, 42 seconds. It felt like a lifetime. I hit save, checked twice, then checked again. Proof lived in my pocket now, which meant denial had nowhere left to hide. I scrolled to the beginning of their thread. 2 months earlier. Light, polite. Nice to meet you. Coffee sometime. Then the slope steepened. Compliments, inside jokes, flirty jabs, the kind of banter married people save for home. She sent selfies with new hair. He replied with fire emojis. She used nicknames only we used to share. The messages started skipping days, big gaps that told a louder story. They weren't texting because they were meeting. Restaurants I knew. A fast food joint near the university. She told him she was busy some nights. The same nights she told me she was exhausted. It hurt in a specific way. Not rage yet, but a deep, dull drilling behind the ribs. I kept scrolling, jaw tight, counting the times she typed "can't wait." It read like a romance novel I'd never consented to star in. Then I saw the line that pulled the floor out. There it was, centered in a bubble I could never unsee. It was so good last night. No winks. No excuses, just naked satisfaction. Her reply, "Your trouble." His, a smirking emoji. Time-stamped 1:18 a.m. The same night she came home early. The same night she said her stomach hurt. The same night I made her tea and turned down the bed. I stared so long my eyes burned. I thought about the ordinary things. how I fixed the leaky sink that week, how I folded her favorite shirts warm from the dryer. There's a special cruelty in being faithful in the background of someone else's highlight reel. I took another screenshot, another. Proof stacked up like bricks around my heart. And still I scrolled, because sometimes the only way out is through. I realized my hands were shaking. The phone rattled against my wedding ring. I gripped harder until the metal dug into my palm. My eyes blurred, and I told myself it was the screen brightness. It wasn't. Grown men cry in quiet rooms with no witnesses and no applause. That's how it was for me. A few slow breaths, one broken exhale. Then I wiped my face on the sheet like I'd smeared grease at the shop. I took another look at their thread and felt the strangest calm. Not peace, a settling. Like wet concrete finding the mold. You want the anger to explode and end it, but it doesn't. It hardens. It holds. It waits. I hit record again, capturing the line where she promised to bring the spare laptop. That sentence felt colder than any "I love you" she'd sent him. It wasn't affection, it was logistics, with my life. I turned my head. Amelia slept on her side, back to me, breathing steady, mouth slightly open in that quiet way I'd once found adorable. Tonight it felt staged, like the innocence of a child's bedroom in a haunted house. Her phone rested between us on the nightstand, a lighthouse for a ship that never sailed home. I studied her shoulder blade rising and falling beneath the blanket. That body had leaned on mine during funerals and fevers. Now it was a locked door I couldn't knock on anymore. I wanted to shake her awake and demand she explain everything. Instead, I stayed still, not to protect her, to protect the evidence. If I woke her now, truth would go dark again. I looked back at the thread, then at her, and understood. I hadn't just lost a laptop. I'd lost the version of her I swore I knew. I put the phone face down and stared at the ceiling. Hairline cracks crossed above me like a map I couldn't read. My dad used to say, "When you can't fix the thing, fix your face." So I practiced breathing. 4 in, 4 out. The room hummed, the fridge clicked. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked once and gave up. I thought about every vow we made and the small ways we'd kept them. Then I thought about the big way she hadn't. Sleep didn't come, only the slow tick of realization. Men my age know this tick. It's the sound of a life shifting tracks. You don't hear the destination, you hear the switch. By 3 a.m., I'd made a choice. Not confrontation. Not yet. The next move had to be clean, legal, final. The ceiling didn't answer, but the silence did. Morning turned me into a machine. Coffee, shower, shirt, tie. I moved like a man performing his own life for an audience that wasn't there. She floated through the kitchen, light and kind, like nothing was broken. "Big day?" she asked. I nodded, mouth full of toothpaste I could still taste. She kissed my cheek. I let it land, then wiped the spot with a napkin when she turned. Petty, maybe. Human, definitely. Driving to work, my hands stayed at 10 and 2 like a student driver. The radio talked about traffic and touchdowns. None of it stuck. At my desk, I opened a blank document and wrote a list. Attorney, copies, storage, passwords. When I finished, I added one more word, dignity. I closed the laptop, the work one, and stared at my reflection in the screen. The man looking back wasn't lost. He was preparing. On my lunch break, I sat in the truck and asked the questions that never make it into wedding vows. Why my laptop? Because it was easier than cash. Because it was mine, not ours. Because giving him my tool felt like erasing me piece by piece. Why me? Because I was steady. Because steady men are boring to people chasing fireworks. Or maybe because she could. Gaslighters don't pick the weak. They pick the reasonable. The ones who will try to understand. I thought about every late night I'd spent debugging code. The careful backups, the photos of my dad teaching me to change brake pads. All of that passed to a stranger like a spare charger. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The horn didn't sound, but something inside me did. By afternoon, a colder truth set in. This wasn't only cheating, it was theft. Of property, yes, but deeper than that. She'd stolen my certainty and replaced it with fog. She'd watched me question my memory and let me walk through the house like a ghost, hunting his own past. That wasn't neglect, that was strategy. Realizing that stripped away something tender in me I'd been holding on to. I'd wanted a reason that made sense. Boredom, loneliness, A mistake. But logistics don't care about poetry. She chose convenience over conscience. She chose a child's thrill over a grown man's trust. I felt a click inside the way a locked door decides. It wasn't rage. It was resolve. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. This ends on my terms. Then I deleted the line. Some vows you don't write. You just keep. That night, I read the word gaslighting out loud in the empty living room. Not for a dictionary, for me. Gaslighting is when someone turns your mind into a hall of mirrors and then calls you clumsy for bumping into the glass. It's smiling while you doubt the truth you can touch. It's asking if you even use the thing you use every day. I thought back to her calm face, the easy shrugs, the soft voice that felt like care and cut like wire. The definition fit too well. I didn't feel crazy anymore. I felt correct, the kind of correct that doesn't need shouting. I shut off the lights and stood in the dark long enough to let my eyes adjust. When they did, the shapes of the room returned. The couch, the frame, the doorway. Reality. Steady again. In that quiet, my next step appeared as clearly as a lit exit sign. I drove around for an hour before I finally pulled into a strip mall office that advertised family law and wills, the kind of place you pass 100 times and never imagine you'll need. I sat in the truck, palms sweating on the wheel, and practiced the line out loud. My wife cheated and gave my laptop to her boyfriend. It sounded surreal, even to me, like I was stealing a plot from a trashy TV show. Inside, the waiting room smelled like copier toner and lemon cleaner. A receptionist offered water. When the attorney, McAllister, mid-40s, steady eyes, called my name, I felt something loosen in my chest. I told him everything from the missing charger to the night I recorded the messages. He didn't flinch, didn't make me feel dramatic or weak. He asked smart questions, dates, screenshots, whether the laptop predated the marriage. When I said yes, he nodded like a piece had clicked into place. "Ethan," he said, "you've been carrying the truth alone. That stops now." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until my throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't defending my sanity. I was building a case. As I slid the phone across his desk, the screen full of her words to Jay, I realized the balance had shifted. Whatever came next, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't crazy. I had proof. And now, I had a plan. McAllister leaned back, hands folded. "Here's what we do," he said. "First, you stop talking. Not to her, not to friends who know her, not to anyone who might tip her off. Gaslighters win when you react. We don't react. We strategize." He laid out a simple, ruthless timeline. Quietly retain him as counsel. Secure all documents, bank statements, titles, insurance, retirement accounts. Change nothing in the house. Don't move out. Don't provoke a fight. Don't confess that you know. "You'll be tempted to confront," he warned. "That gives her time to get ahead of you. Move money. Rewrite the story. Play the victim. We control the narrative by controlling the evidence." He slid a checklist toward me, neat as a flight plan. Collect screenshots with timestamps. Save message threads to a cloud drive she can't access. Photograph household assets. Document who bought the laptop and when. "When we serve," he said, "we serve with precision." I sat there absorbing the clarity. For weeks, I'd been stumbling through fog, bumping into furniture I couldn't see. Now the lights were on. He finished with the line that anchored me. "Say nothing. Prepare everything." I walked out of that office feeling like a man who finally put his back against a wall that wouldn't move. The urge to run home and explode was strong. Instead, I drove to a print shop and bought folders, labels, a portable drive. If she could be surgical with her lies, I could be surgical with the truth. And that would be my advantage. That night, after she fell asleep, I became my own archivist. I stood in the glow of the home office monitor and dumped every screenshot into labeled folders. J, initial, J, overnights, J, laptop. I screen recorded the most damning scrolls, reading the timestamps aloud on camera so the audio matched the visuals. Then I printed. Page after page slid out, the printer's hum steady like a heartbeat finally finding rhythm. Each page was a sandbag on a levee I'd needed weeks ago. I backed it all up to an encrypted drive McAllister recommended, then uploaded a second copy to a new cloud account with a password I wrote on paper and locked in my tool chest. I snapped photos of the house, TV, consoles, her designer bag, My father's old camera bag now empty on the shelf like a mouth missing teeth. I took close-ups of serial numbers and made a list with purchase dates. There's a quiet dignity in cataloging your life, even when the reason hurts. Around 2 a.m., I looked at the neat stacks and felt something like pride. She'd trained me to doubt my mind. Tonight, paper trained me to trust it again. When I finally turned off the printer, the silence in the room felt different. Less like abandonment, more like readiness. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was documenting. And documentation doesn't flinch. In the days that followed, I became careful with space. Not dramatic, not obvious, just intentional. I boxed up things we shared that really belonged to me. Tools, the records I bought before we met, my grandfather's watch I'd kept in a drawer by habit. I labeled quietly and stacked neatly in the garage, 2 at a time, never enough to ring an alarm. When she asked what I was doing, I said spring cleaning, January be damned. I deep cleaned the kitchen and found the small mercies older men know. The grounding rhythm of scrubbing a pan until it shines. The calm of a junk drawer finally tamed. I cooked dinner, washed up, kept my voice even. She noticed something. I could see it in how her eyes followed me, measuring, but she couldn't name it. That was the point. One night I stood in our closet and slid my suits to one side, court ready on one rod, everyday armor on the other. I tucked a copy of the files inside a garment bag. If the house burned down, the truth would walk out with me. The more order I created, the less room there was for her chaos. Control doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's a perfectly labeled box. It was almost funny how often she asked if I was okay once I stopped telegraphing pain. "You've been quiet," she said, touching my arm in the kitchen. I smiled, kept stirring the chili. "Feeling good," I said. The old me would have used that opening to ask for a talk, to beg for honesty, to plea for the version of us that existed in year 2. The new me let silence carry the weight. Silence made her fidget. She put her phone down more. She lingered in doorways. One evening, she tried a half apology that wasn't about anything specific. "I know I've been distant. Work's been a lot." I nodded like a doctor hearing a textbook symptom. "I hear you." That was it. No lecture, no tears. Control, I learned, isn't about dominating a moment. It's about refusing to be dragged into a performance. My calm unnerved her more than any accusation. That night, when she asked if I wanted to watch a show together, I said sure and picked a crime drama. I could feel her glancing at me during the scenes where the liar smiled. I didn't look back. "You okay?" she whispered near the end. I paused the TV and smiled. Great. For once, the word felt true. McAllister texted a time window. "Process server tomorrow. 10:00. The message landed like a bell toll. I spent the morning doing ordinary things on purpose. Laundry, wiping down counters, setting up my desk. I wanted my body to remember the feel of a normal day, because after noon, nothing would be normal again. Around 11, she was on the couch scrolling, one leg tucked under the other, sunlight on her face. A strange tenderness washed over me. Not love, not anymore, but grief for the house we built inside a lie. I set a glass of water on the coffee table for her and went to the door when I saw a car slow on our street. A man in a jacket stepped out with a flat envelope. He checked the address, looked up, and I opened the door before he knocked. "Ethan Miller?" he asked. "That's me." He handed me the envelope meant for her. A clean, practiced exchange. A trigger pulled with paperwork. I called out, "Amelia, could you get the door?" My voice didn't shake. Control in its purest form is a steady hand. She appeared with a curious smile, the same one she used on neighbors and waiters and relatives she barely liked. The process server asked her name and confirmed it. He passed her the envelope, said, "You've been served," and left like he'd delivered a pizza. She watched him walk away, then glanced at me, confused, then back at the envelope like it was a bill that arrived months too early. "What is it?" she asked. "Open it," I said. My voice sounded almost gentle to my own ears, and that surprised me. She slid a finger under the tab and pulled out the stack. Petition, exhibits, dates. I watched her read, the color draining in waves like a tide going out against her will. She looked up. "Ethan, what is this?" There it was, the real surprise. Not guilt, not denial. Confusion that the script had changed without her permission. I didn't gloat. I didn't rant. I just waited. because the next line wasn't mine to say. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is nothing at all. Her eyes flicked over the header again as if the word might morph into something softer. Divorce. She swallowed and tried a tactic I knew too well. Play calm. Is there someone else? She asked, careful, curious, like she was owed a yes that could make me the bad guy cleanly. I held her gaze. No. The quiet between us grew teeth. She scanned the exhibits, my screenshots, the message scrolls, a photo of my desk with the empty space where the MacBook used to sit. She reached the line about separate property, the laptop purchased before the marriage. Her jaw tightened. This isn't fair, she whispered. I almost laughed at the word. Fair. She'd erased my reality for weeks, and now the paperwork offended her sense of balance. It's honest, I said. She blinked hard and looked away, a tiny tremor in her hands giving her away. This was the moment I'd pictured in the dark. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the clean snap of a truth finally spoken out loud, in black and white. The envelope said divorce. The exhibit said why. She flipped to another page, grasping for something to hold. I let a beat pass, then asked the question that mattered to me more than ceremony, more than posturing. Where's my laptop, Amelia? She stared like she didn't recognize the word. Your laptop. My personal MacBook, the one you told me I probably never had. The calm in my voice startled me. She searched my face, saw there was no room left for theater, and the mask slipped. Ethan, don't do this, she said, voice small. Do what? I asked. Ask you for the truth. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You could almost hear the gears stripping. It's, she started, then stopped. My heartbeat was steady in my ears, like a metronome. I wasn't going to rescue her from the sentence. She had to carry it herself. Where is it? I repeated, slower. The room felt very quiet. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. Somewhere, a dog barked. Inside, a marriage waited for its final word. She looked down at the papers, at her own life printed in cold fonts, then up at me with the face I'd seen on other people but never on her, cornered. Jay sold it, she said. 2 words, and the last clean thread snapped. I felt heat rise, then fall, like a wave that chose not to break. He sold my laptop, I echoed, making it real in the air between us. It had our photos, my dad's code, tax files, 7 years. She winced and rushed to patch the hole with promises. I'll replace it. I'll buy you the newest one, whatever you want. I shook my head. I don't want a new one. I want the one you gave away. She opened her mouth to bargain with a future she no longer owned. I didn't let her. You stole from me, I said, simple, flat. Then you lied and you made me feel crazy for noticing. There was no shout, no thrown glass, no door slam, just a final understanding settling in my bones. Some things can be bought back. Respect isn't one of them. For a second after she said, Jay sold it, the room went silent, like the house was holding its breath with me. Then something tore out of my chest, a shout that surprised even me. Not a tantrum, a roar that had been aging inside my ribs for months. It bounced off the kitchen tile and died on the stainless steel fridge. She flinched, covered her mouth, started crying. And then, just as suddenly, I laughed. Not because any of it was funny, but because I finally understood the shape of the thing I'd been fighting. It wasn't a mystery, it was a decision she made. The laugh wasn't joyful, it was release, like a stuck valve finally turning. She kept saying, I'm sorry, reaching for me like apologies could glue reality back together. I stepped away. I noticed small details, how the afternoon light made dust float in the air, how the clock over the stove ticked like a metronome for the end of a marriage. I thought about the years we'd paid rent together, the way neighbors waved when we mowed the lawn, how normal we had looked from the street. My hand stopped shaking. I took a breath that didn't taste like fear. The worst had already happened. Now came the math. I told her, we're done. Not a threat, a statement. I wasn't asking for a fight. I was closing the book. The man who doubted his memory was gone. The man who knew what he saw had arrived. Tears came fast, the kind that look like truth when they're really strategy. She followed me down the hallway, grabbing for the softest words in her arsenal. Let me fix it. I'll buy you a new one. The best one. We'll start fresh. That phrase, start fresh, is a favorite of grown-ups who never cleaned up the last mess. I stood at the doorway of my office, staring at the empty space where the MacBook used to sit. the faint dust shadow like a chalk outline. You don't get it, I said. It's not about a computer. She nodded too quickly like a student guessing. Pictures, right? Your code. I'll pay a service to recover everything. She wanted to solve the price tag, not the wound. Men my age know this game. Replace the object, pretend the meaning returns with it. It never does. I remembered my dad teaching me to back up files, how he'd say, redundancy is respect for your future self. I respected my future self, except I hadn't planned for betrayal. I'll do anything, she whispered. Anything was always too late. She tried to touch my arm. I let my hand hang at my side like a locked door. Bargaining might work with salesmen, not with trust. No, I said, steady as a level. Outside, a lawnmower droned. Kids nearby argued about a basketball foul. Life kept going in the most regular ways while mine made a turn I'd never come back from. There's nothing to buy, I told her. The bill is due in a different currency. We sat at opposite ends of the living room, like strangers in a waiting area. She listed model numbers, prices, features, obsessed with proof of effort. I'll get you the M-series, maxed RAM, the one the YouTubers rave about. I almost smiled. That's how we both coped. She with performance, me with precision. I don't want a faster machine, I finally said. I want the one that held my life. I described it to her. The folder named Miller 2018 Road Trip with us in Santa Fe. Her hair caught in desert wind. The spreadsheet tracking the first year we kept our budget under control. A draft letter to my mom I never sent after her surgery. Every half-finished project that proved I was still trying. Passwords saved for services I'd forgotten. The notes from counseling we said we'd start and never did. 7 years isn't storage. It's sediment. It settles into layers until it becomes foundation. I didn't think, she said. That was the problem and the plan. I pictured Jay opening my laptop for the first time, my wallpaper with a mountain photo I took at sunrise, a little sticky note on the keyboard that used to remind me to stand up every hour, some other man's hands on my life. I felt a clean anger, the kind that doesn't shake. You gave away the one archive I trusted, I said, not loud, not dramatic. Her face collapsed around the words. She finally understood the size of the hole and that it wasn't measured in gigabytes. Courtrooms aren't like TV. They're fluorescent, orderly, and oddly small. Perfect rooms for big endings. My attorney, David, moved like a man who has walked this hallway 1,000 times. We didn't go for flames, we went for facts. Dates, screenshots, the documented timeline of how reality had been bent. Her side tried the usual. Misunderstanding, marital fatigue, a temporary lapse. But the messages were a quiet chorus that never missed a beat. Judges listened for rhythm, consistency, credibility, cause and effect. When David laid out in the property history, my laptop purchased pre-marriage, the line from ownership to theft to damages drew itself. My hand stayed folded. I didn't look at her because I knew I was done looking for tells in her face. The judge's ruling wasn't vindictive. It was clean. Compensation for the machine and the irreplaceable data to the extent the law allows. The lease transfers to me. Account separated, a schedule for the rest. When the gavel came down, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a man who had finished a grueling repair, tightened the last bolt, wiped the grease, and stepped back from a machine that finally hummed like it should. Outside the courthouse, the sky was the ordinary blue of any Wednesday. David shook my hand. You did the work, he said. Work. That's all it had ever been. Emotional labor disguised as patience, finally converted into paperwork. She moved her things out in waves. 2 suitcases, then boxes labeled with handwriting I used to find charming. The house echoed differently without her. No more 2 toothbrushes by the sink. No more shared calendar on the fridge. It's funny what older men notice, how the water pressure changes when fewer showers are taken, how the trash can fills slower, how the quiet at night is both friend and stranger. She texted sometimes short, practical messages about mail and utilities. Then, nothing. Mutual friends did that careful dance folks do when they don't want to pick sides. Most stayed quiet. The few who reached out said the right words. Here if you need anything, and meant them in the limited ways people can. Meanwhile, Jay evaporated, social media scrubbed. No more public tags. The kid who once posted latte art and gym mirrors went dark. Cowards love the shade. Part of me wanted to hunt him down, say something that would scar him into wisdom. Then I pictured my father's look, if I did. Disappointment dressed as concern. I stayed still. Consequences were already moving where I couldn't see. That was enough. I replaced the bedsheets with a set that didn't remember her shape. I cooked for one and learned exactly how much pasta to boil without leftovers. I took long walks at dusk, nodding at neighbors who knew better than to ask. Healing didn't feel like a sunrise. It felt like sanding a rough board. Slow passes, steady pressure, patience until the grain reveals itself. One night I sat at my desk. The new emptiness had its own gravity, and opened Facebook. I had the folder, screenshots, dates, the moderate, adult version of the truth. Not rage, not gossip, not names meant to ruin careers, just a record. I typed, gaslighting isn't love, it's theft, of time, of certainty, of yourself. Then I told the story the way I would want it told if I needed a stranger's courage to leave. The missing laptop, the calm deflections, the night I recorded messages because I no longer trusted my memory, the courtroom where truth finally cost something. I blurred identifying details where I could, left in enough so the lesson had bones. Before posting, I sat in silence, hearing my mother's old advice, say it once then live it. I clicked publish. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt useful. If men my age have a purpose after a fall, it's to turn the wreck into a warning flare. 20 minutes later, a comment from a retired firefighter. Been there, you're not crazy. Then a grandmother. My daughter needed to read this. I didn't respond to most. I just let the post be what it was. A lighthouse for anyone sailing blind toward the same rocks. By morning, the post had traveled farther than I expected. Shared in a neighborhood group, then a college forum, then on the page of a local podcast host who liked real stories. Notifications stacked like fallen books. Men in their 50s wrote about divorces they'd kept quiet. Women told me about bosses, parents, partners who built houses of mirrors around them. A veteran said he trusted his instincts again because of those paragraphs. I didn't need the applause. I needed the echo to reach someone who thought they were the only one hearing it. Not all comments were kind. Some strangers love mess more than truth, but the majority were steady, like handshakes in text. I brewed coffee and read until the mug went cold. Healing isn't linear, but recognition is. It builds a bridge under your feet while you walk. I took the post and saved it as a PDF, labeled it When I Chose Reality. That afternoon, I turned off notifications and went for a drive with the windows down. The air smelled like cut grass and summer rain. At a stoplight, a guy in a pickup nodded like he knew. Maybe he'd read it, maybe not. Didn't matter, I knew. I'd come back to myself the long way. That counts. The call came at dusk, when the sky goes gray and kitchens glow. Her name on my screen had that old power for half a second, then none. I answered, "No hello, just really, Ethan? You wanted to humiliate me?" The voice was familiar, hurt masquerading as anger. I let her talk. She said I'd made her a joke, that people were whispering, that I never loved her if I could do this. Then she played the oldest card. If anything happens to me, it's on you. I stared out the window at my quiet street, a boy tossing a football to his dad. I said, "The post told my story. If you see yourself in it, that's not my doing." She went silent, then tried a softer route. "Can't we at least agree you overreacted?" I remembered standing in our kitchen, begging for the truth while she smiled like I'd lost my keys. "No," I said, "I reacted. You're just not used to consequences." She called me cruel. I told her cruelty was selling a man's history for a fling. She hung up with a sharp breath, the kind people use when a script fails. I set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Outside, the boy missed the catch and laughed. His dad laughed too and tossed the ball again. I whispered, "Onward," to the empty room, not as a battle cry, as a plan. Looking back, I realized this story was never really about a missing laptop. It was about losing, and then reclaiming, my sense of reality. Gaslighting doesn't start with shouting. It starts with tiny doubts that turn into cages. When someone makes you question your own memory, they're not loving you. They're rewriting you. I lost a marriage, a home, 7 years of shared life. But in the ashes, I found something unbreakable, the ability to trust myself again. Data never lies. Evidence doesn't vanish. The truth was always there. I just needed to stop apologizing long enough to see it. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive or remembering it wrong, stop and breathe. Look at the facts. They'll save you faster than any apology ever could. And if this story feels familiar, don't hide it. Share it. Because truth only heals when it's spoken aloud.